fluctuations. But the statement I raised in March was floated by the committee. This is what happens when we treat these cabinet secretaries with kid gloves. The person who you are summoning takes a chopper, goes to his county, and doesn't care. I can tell you for free, it is possible that these cabinet secretaries have put their legs on their seats and they're watching us on TV because we look like we're in a Mexican soap opera. Senator Kindiki is right. They know we can't do anything. And this started the day we were supposed to censure a cabinet secretary and we walked out of this chamber. We left because for that particular time, it was politically correct. Now, it is affecting the people who elected you. And some of these cabinet secretaries think that by becoming so big and big heads, they're going to be elected governors. Some want to be presidents. Of which country? Which country are you talking about? It's unfortunate that the persons who are supposed to check government are grieving with the people who are supposed to be in government. The public is confused. Members of the Senate. When the police barricaded Parliament Road and we were discussing a contentious matter here, we adjourned and the Speaker ordered them to leave. And they left. The Speaker orders cabinet secretaries to come here, and they don't come. It is possible that some of them even call the office. I am aware that when we raised the questions about the judges, a very senior official even called the office to ask us why we were raising the question on the judges, the question that I raised on the appointment of judges. It's unfortunate. We must accept the blame. If my good friend Senator Kipchumba Murkomen took the fight of 2015, where we drafted a law to change some of his framework in the Constitution, we would have made some progress. But politics has changed, and everybody is not talking about the right thing. We are talking about our political
like
side,
a yo-yo,
whichever
the
side.
way they feel like. It's cannot be. And you cannot allow it, Mr. Chairman. From what Senator Medona has sent me and from a clerk, you actually issued a summon. A summon was issued and a summon has been stamped. It cannot be that either the cabinet secretary, and I have it here, is the one to Charles Keter is dated 17th of September. It cannot be, Mr. Chairman, that he chooses which one to obey and which one not to obey. So I'm pleading with you under Section 19 that you find him first. And Mr. Chairman, part of the problems we are having with this presidential system is because we cannot question these ministers directly as was supposed to be in a different system. And therefore we are asking you, Chairman, today, and I spoke about you as a chairperson of this committee, to be a little rough on these cabinet secretaries. Because they are behaving as if we are calling them to have a cup of tea, and we are not asking them to have a cup of tea here. We are asking them to speak to us. And Chairman, since you are a historian, the yellow vest movement in France was based on petroleum. Isn't it a fact? The unrest in Paris was based on increase of fuel prices. This is a serious issue that can invite unrest in Kenya. And yet they are treating this matter with contempt. So, Mr. Chairman, we are urging you to take very, very stern action. This afternoon, present a statement here to the committee of the whole, to the Speaker, that the Speaker has been ignored by cabinet secretaries who we have appointed and not elected. This afternoon, the National Assembly is going to have adjourn to discuss this matter. And you can bet they will be running with their tails behind in between their legs to go to the National Assembly in contempt of the Senate. We will not allow it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
I'm going to stand here and say, Mr. Speaker, that the issue of Kirinyaga pales in the shadow of the issues that Senator Dulo and Senator Wetangula are handling on the medical leasing. Have we accused them of corruption?
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
The report has not been issued. Mr. Speaker.
What's your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr. must, Mr. Speaker, stick to the standing orders. This House, Mr. Speaker, under Standing Order 96, if you make an allegation, you must substantiate. And, Mr. Speaker, it is clear from your rulings and also from the standing orders, you cannot import social media videos, newspaper cuttings, and, Mr. Speaker, come and make them as, Mr. Speaker, absolute truth here. You either substantiate or you withdraw and apologize.
Yes, Senator Mutula.
There's nothing to withdraw. Please, let's ignore Senator Murkomen for Mr. Speaker, that video, if Mr. Murkomen, who is so famous for posting all sorts of things on our platform, needs substantiation, he should go to the platform. That video is on the platform. I'm not going to substantiate anything. It's there.
What's your point of order, Senator Cheriot?
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Speaker, we're beginning to lose it. And it's really unfortunate if you allow this to happen. You're the Speaker, you preside over this House. If you allow the kind of exchanges that Senator Mutula want to push and bandy around in this House, where he responds to a member and says, even if Standing Order number 96 demands that I substantiate, I'm not going to do it, that there's no basis for anybody rising against him, you're setting a very dangerous precedent. Senator James Orengo, Mr. Speaker, raised a very important issue, which I had hoped that perhaps you'll give us a ruling on. That for every time that people, that senators rise on points of order, they will state the particular standing order in which the member who's on the floor has violated. Senator Murkomen, in compliance with that, has set a precedent. He has given new standing order number 96, which Senator Mutula Kilonzo has violated. Instead of following in the good practice that has been set, thanks to the intervention of Leader of Minority, you have allowed the Speaker who's on the floor to dismiss him so casually. Mr. Speaker, please do not allow this to pass. Make a determination on that point of order. Senator Mutula Kilonzo must either substantiate or withdraw as per our standing orders.
Senator Sakaja.
In VX. Mr. Speaker, we proceeded to inquire by virtue of our training and by virtue of the law, the reasons for the arrest of Senator Malala. There was no warrant of arrest. The officers said, call the DCI. We have just been given instructions. Mr. Speaker, on further inquiry as to the circumstances that would lead to the suspicion, the arrest of Senator Malala, would you believe it, Speaker? The person in charge told us that Senator Malala is accused of having distributed Government of Kenya sanitizers in Mumias yesterday. And Speaker, I want to look into your eye because I'm addressing you. He was distributing sanitizers in Western Province. Yesterday, in Mumias in particular, yesterday, Senator Kasanga was in the press, our own senator, talking about COVID millionaires, people who have stolen masks, sanitizers to go and sell. Senator Malala was distributing sanitizers to widows. They misled us, Mr. Speaker, and this is very challenging. Because as lawyers, myself including Senator Omogeni, should not have let Senator Malala off. But we were told there's mischief in this chamber. So against our oath as lawyers, Mr. Speaker, we have come to address you. Against our oath, we have let Senator Malala, who was supposed to go to Nairobi, Nairobi area, is now on his way to Mumias. Mr. Speaker, it is you, and I'm looking at you. It is you, Mr. Speaker, who has been defied. And Mr. Speaker, if you cannot sit on that seat, this will be a good time to resign. I can sit there. Because this is a chamber of parliament. It is to an extent, Mr. Speaker, you have such powers that if there was a vacancy in the executive, Mr. Speaker, you could be a president. And for even a rumor, Mr. Speaker, that you're under pressure. I hear you're under pressure. Pressure from who? Did God call you? Did you speak to God this afternoon, Mr. Speaker? Who is pressurizing you?
It's good you said it's a rumor.
Yes.
Because I'm not under any pressure.
Mr. Speaker, if you are not under any pressure and nobody has called you, Mr. Speaker, this session must end now. Because if you gazetted a special sitting, Mr. Speaker, and somebody distributed sanitizers, and that is a misdemeanor. It's a misdemeanor to the extent, Mr. Speaker, we would have paid for a bond, would have finished this business, and Senator Malala would have been charged even if they wanted to take him to Somalia or Kakuma. Mr. Speaker, there has never been a day since your election that you are under trial. It's not us. We have done our bit. If you can issue a directive seated in your chair, and Mr. Speaker, somebody says he's on leave. Imagine what would happen, Mr. Speaker, if the car that is driving Senator Malala at high speed rolls somewhere in Naivasha. God forbid. Would the cabinet secretary be on leave also? The contempt that they are treating us, the contempt they treat people who are elected, Mr. Speaker, tells you, Mr. Speaker, that this country is on the brink. But let me just finish, because in my anger I might say something that might lead to things I don't want to say. This is what the 32nd president said, and I'm talking to the powers, because other than taking my life, you have nothing, no control over me. He said this in 1941. We too, born to freedom and believing in freedom, are willing to fight and maintain freedom. We and all others who believe deeply, as we should, would rather die on our feet than live on our knees. We will not live on our knees. If, Mr. Speaker, you even direct we proceed, there will be so much chaos in this floor, Mr. Speaker. There will be no action. You will have to call police to arrest all of us, because we cannot proceed, Mr. Speaker. It is chilling to think, Mr. Speaker, that we can proceed when our senators are being taken across the country on the highway by force with people carrying guns. Mr. Speaker, if there has been a violation of Parliament, Mr. Speaker.
What's your point of order, Senator Kajwang?
Mr. Speaker.
Order, Senator Murkomen.
Mr. Speaker, Senator Murkomen will not teach me how to prosecute my business here, because I was brought here by the people of Homa Bay. Mr. Speaker, I didn't want to disrupt Senator Mutula. I feel him and I hear him. Could you, Mr. Speaker, just advise him not to threaten chaos in the House? That would be the orderly way to proceed.
People of the House, Mr. Speaker.
No,
Senator, if, Mr. Speaker, we engage the House, at least there's a list of over 20 senators saying we are not part of this resolution. And, Mr. Speaker, there was an order that was served to the Speaker from the Political Parties Dispute Tribunal, not recognizing the party, the coalition agreement between Jubilee and Kano. Probably, Mr. Speaker, you are telling us now to completely forget about systems, about the observance of the rule of law, about the adherence to the tribunals that have been set by the Constitution to arbitrate when there are disputes within ourselves. So, Mr. Speaker, be it as it may, let us all remember, we may be sitting here, but in the history of this country, it will be remembered there was one time where somebody given the responsibility to manage the House sat down and midwifed the death of democracy.
Order.
The death of
Order, Senator
observance.
Linturi. Order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order. Order, Senator Linturi. Order. You know, Senator Linturi, you must understand the chair. Because the chair, I can see when you said what you have just said, there were comments, varying comments, depending on the recipient of your information. But please understand, the chair can neither cheer nor jeer. You get the point? So let's not, these are things, some of the things you're saying can be said, maybe out there in our party caucuses. Senator Kangata, I thought you should listen first. That's what I should think. I mean, natural justice. Exactly. Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr.
Speaker, just on a point of order, I know you've brushed aside the last comment by Senator Linturi. I'm not quite certain whether you want that statement on record, that the person who is charged with managing this house.
I didn't even quite hear him because I didn't want to hear what he was saying.
You heard.
I didn't quite hear the meaning, but I heard him trying to perhaps.
What
did he say?
He said the person given the responsibility of managing the business of this house midwife the death of democracy. Who is that person? If that person is in reference to you, Mr. Speaker, it cannot be on record.
Senator Linturi, were you referring to the Speaker? Let's yes?
Mr. Speaker, if you never heard, being the person that is so sensitive to comments that we make here, who is always listening to what we are saying, and who has been steadfast in correcting us, Mr. Speaker, unless my good friend Mutula Kilonzo Jr. may have been in another world where I was trying to imagine such statements coming from Linturi. So, Mr. Speaker, if you've not heard, I don't think he may have been imagining his own things.
Let's make progress. Let's make progress. I have already made myself clear. Let's make progress. Let's make progress. Senator Haniri. What is it, Senator Haniri, a moment. What is it, Senator Pareno? You are a bit agitated.
Thank you, Speaker. I rise to second this motion. And Mr. Speaker, for the record, it's important that the matters of law that have been raised are settled. The Fair Administrative Act is in front of me, Mr. Speaker. And in the making of this law, Mr. Speaker, we were all here. Professor Kindiki was the majority leader then. We did not subject the removal of the Deputy Speaker, or for that matter, the Speaker, or any person to this act. That I must say on record. Number two, for the avoidance of doubt, Mr. Speaker, I think for the reasons why, when you look at the Constitution, Article 106, and the standing orders, where this is a special motion, the reason why I think, and it's my opinion, there are no reasons, is because the position and the motion we are moving is of a member who continues sitting in this House after the motion. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, it is important that that person who is going to continue sitting, who is holding a position, continues sitting in this House after a motion of this nature has been moved. And that is the position of a Deputy Speaker. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, it's not a coincidence that this motion is being moved by the leaders. We are warning ourselves, me included, that the seat I occupy as minority whip, that seat belongs to the coalition. And I must, in all cases,
in the trust bestowed upon me by that coalition, continue advocating for the obligations, rights, and wishes of that coalition. Once that trust is done, Mr. Speaker, there is nothing this House can do to a person who has lost trust of his political party. It sounds like a death knell, but it's a fact. The premium, Mr. Speaker, for these positions we occupy is loyalty to the cause. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, our friend, Professor Kindiki, finds himself in this position. Mr. Speaker, it's not also a coincidence that Article 106 puts such a high threshold. And I want to mention that as I sit, because I will not get into the details that Senator Kangata did, because a lot of us are not party to those issues. And I strongly believe those are not issues that all of us ought to get into. Professor Kithure Kindiki and any person occupying that position under Article 106, Mr. Speaker, must be able to show that he has the confidence of the House. And that is the reason there's a 2/3 membership. And that membership, Mr. Speaker, is a membership of the majority and minority. It's a simple thing. Votes of confidence all over the world, Mr. Speaker, are not personal. So nobody carries a personal agenda against Professor Kindiki. None of us, Mr. Speaker, are questioning his competence. None of us, Mr. Speaker, including myself, is conducting a trial. I would have great difficulties if we were conducting a trial. Since we are not conducting a trial, we did not conduct any recruitment of either you, the Speaker, or the Deputy Speaker, Mr. Speaker. You were elected politically. You were brought here politically. You persuaded the majority to elect you politically, and therefore you must persuade the majority to continue remaining in office politically. There's no other question. There's no middle ground, and that is the end of it. Mr. Speaker, to say that this is momentous, it is. We have rarely had a motion of this nature or even passed any constitutional motion that requires 2/3. The fact that this motion has reached this far should tick the mind of Professor Kindiki. What is it that you have done to this membership that would cause so many of them to allow this motion to reach at this stage? Now I'm talking to your conscience, because these decisions are about your conscience. It's not omissions or commissions. It's confidence in this House. You will sit with us here after this motion, whether you removed or not. But ask yourself these questions as you go along. The overtures you are offered, Senator Kindiki, should have informed your decision. Since you didn't take them, the vote of confidence will be taken, and you will see it for yourself what it means, Mr. Speaker, to have a motion of this nature. Therefore, allow me to quote Churchill, because this is politics. And politics has no form. And this is what he had to say. And I say this to Professor Kindiki, my friend. Politics is the ability to foretell what is going to happen tomorrow, next week, next month, and next year, and to have the ability to explain why it didn't happen. You know what has befell you, Professor Kindiki. I support the motion. Thank you.
On the best formula on how to share revenue amongst the 47 counties. 18 counties stand to lose money that will be diverted to 29 counties. So I'd like us to cross over live to the Senate Assembly and listening to what this Senator Mutula Kilonzo is saying.
Unless we have constitutional reform. Mr. Speaker, although Senator Orengo did not succeed on that day on the adjournment, this country has changed and we have a new constitution. Mr. Speaker, we will not proceed today unless we have those 3 senators. If we have to sit on this table, we will sit on it. Because, Mr. Speaker, I am in this Senate. Mr. Speaker, I was elected in this Senate because one person who was a member of this Senate was found dead on his bed, Senator Mutula Kilonzo, my dad. And if it's not Malala, and if it's not Lelegwe, it's going to be me or you. The former President Moi, may his soul rest in peace, as the President of the Republic allowed Senator Orengo to tell him on his face that he was misleading the country. We must tell the President Uhuru Kenyatta that we will not allow. This sort of thing cannot happen in Kenya. In 2020, Mr. Speaker, we are calling upon you to adjourn this House. Tell the IG we need the senators here. Unless those senators have committed treason, which is not bailable. Mr. Speaker, those senators should be here to conduct their business. I have represented Senator Haniri. Yes, I represented Senator Haniri when he was an assistant minister. When I was a young man, he was released on his own personal cognizance as an assistant minister. Even if there was an offense committed, those gentlemen can come here and we will represent them in court. But if my good friend and person who calls me my father, Senator Orengo, who is here, and Fogisio, who allowed this special sitting, is going to allow this sort of thing to continue, Mr. Speaker, there is no reason why we are a legislature. We should call ourselves members of county assemblies. It is extremely upsetting, Mr. Speaker, that senators have to hide. People have to switch off their phones so that you are not traced by the police. When did this become a police state? When Senator of Nairobi, Sakaja, we raised a concern here. I know Senator Kangata had an issue about what happened to him. But this is exactly what we were saying. That when one member of this House is in trouble, Mr. Speaker, it doesn't matter what agenda it is. It doesn't matter who is winning. What matters, Mr. Speaker, is that we are together in this House to do the business of this country. Nobody is doing his personal business here. Mr. Speaker, I second this motion that we adjourn this business until we get confirmation. Mr. Speaker, who knows? While we are conducting this business, what is happening to Senator Lelegwe? He could be found in Ngong Forest. They could inject him with something and kill him slowly. I have seen the pain of death. I have smelt death. I have seen what happens when somebody gives you poison. You bleed and bleed so much, like my father did. May not happen to another person, because we are not conducting personal business of any person. I support. Thank you, Speaker.
Honorable Senators, I now propose the question, which is that the debate...
Our meetings have a lot of members attending virtually. The COVID committee has had as many sittings as above 40 or 45, where in fact the members are participating from whatever location. If the silver lining behind COVID is, Mr. Speaker, we have refused to embrace technology. In the judiciary, those who have been there will find that the former registrar, Gladys Cholet, installed screens and technology that has never been used for a long time. Even in one of your committee rooms, Mr. Speaker, there's a screen which is never used. So this is something as the ICT committee of the Senate, then led by Mutai Kagwe, where I was vice chair, proposed these things a long time ago. So, Mr. Speaker, it's important. If governments can run virtually, then people don't have to have meetings. It's the end of traffic jams. We can actually hold 2 sittings or 3 sittings from one location. Mr. Speaker, so that business can run. Mr. Speaker, I still have another proposal. Last week when we sat at Bomas of Kenya, we realized that we can actually have a full sitting of the Senate while observing social distance. Because one of the problems we are having as whips is choosing members who sit here every day. I'm having to have a problem of dispute resolution amongst my members because it's a challenge, Mr. Speaker, of choosing 13 people to come, yet a person has been chosen by his people to come here to speak about issues that are important and pertinent. And when I tell somebody to wait for the opportunity next week, Mr. Speaker, some of them have told us that we are discriminating them. And it's not just our side. In fact, maybe our side of the minority is better. The majority side was actually worse. And I remember Senator Abdullahi complaining loudly in one of our platforms. So, Mr. Speaker, the amendment of the standing orders is important. Mr. Speaker, there will be no excuse for members not to attend meetings. There will be no excuse to make sure that we run our business as quickly as possible. In fact, Mr. Speaker, it is an anathema to have a technology of an iPad sitting here and you leave it here. The idea of having technology, Mr. Speaker, is to carry it where you are. I should stop my car like I did yesterday and we conduct a meeting using this same iPad that you have installed in the Senate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So as we embrace technology, Mr. Speaker, find a way that we can sign our reports electronically, find a way where we can have these gadgets also, where we can visit the business of the Senate virtually, not when we're in the House, even when you're in Makueni, like we had a meeting yesterday, and the Senator of Nyamira had a Zoom meeting while he was at home in Nyamira. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Wambua.